Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm really excited to bring you today's video. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get started. Jenna Walker was living her life in a quiet, peaceful corner of the town. She worked at a small convenience store, mostly going home to read books or sitting on the grass, watching the town's scenery. A town that seemed safe and familiar from the outside, but one that would soon undergo a change that would make Jenna feel constantly threatened in her inner world. Marcus worked as a security guard at the store where Jenna worked. He had lived in the town for decades and was well known and respected by everyone. In his little world, the townspeople trusted him. Marcus was a frequent figure in volunteer-organized events, someone the people turned to for all sorts of security needs. This gave him immense power. In the eyes of the town, he was nearly flawless, a figure who couldn't afford to make mistakes. Although Jenna saw Marcus every day at work, she only knew him as a fellow employee. In their brief conversations, Marcus always appeared helpful, cheerful, and friendly. But one evening, everything changed. That night, the town was especially quiet. The store had closed, and the shops were nearly empty. After attending to the last customer, Jenna was preparing to close the shop. At that moment, Marcus walked in. It seemed like an ordinary situation, but that night was different. As Jenna started to lock the doors, Marcus slowly approached her. At first, it seemed like a normal approach, but within seconds, his movements became more disturbing. He spread his arms wide, smiled, and coldly asked, "Are you comfortable being here alone?" Jenna paused for a moment. His tone felt more like a threat than a simple question. For a while, the silence was anything but comforting. Jenna noticed the seriousness in Marcus's eyes. She had doubts, but didn't know what to do. A man who was known as trustworthy by the townspeople couldn't harm her, could he? She had often admired Marcus's strong personality and firm demeanor, but at that moment, all that sense of security evaporated, and fear began to gnaw at her. Jenna hurried to finish her tasks and leave, but Marcus took a few more steps toward her, seemingly blocking her way. "I can help you. Relax," he said. Those words made Jenna's skin crawl. How could the gaze of a man claiming to help feel so threatening? Trying to act as if everything were normal, she pushed her fear aside. "Thanks, but I really don't need anything," she said, trying to walk away. But then Marcus took another step. Slowly, almost as if he were not moving at all, he started to corner her. Jenna could feel her heartbeat. She felt completely vulnerable. "We're alone in here," Marcus said with an implication in his voice. "I think we should be a little closer." Jenna's body stiffened. Those words were not just words. They felt like a threat. She was now entirely vulnerable. The town's well-known security guard derived his power not from the trust of the townspeople, but from their fear. Her eyes widened with terror, and all her courage evaporated in an instant. Remembering that night was still challenging for Jenna. She couldn't fully understand what had happened. She had been so scared that she froze, unable to speak. Marcus watched her for a while, then slowly turned and left. Jenna remained frozen in place for a long time. Something had changed that night. At some point, she decided to face her fear and realized she had to do something. But at that moment, she had no idea what to do. The fear had deeply infiltrated her, not just physically, but emotionally. Jenna had only one thought in her mind. When everyone trusts him, will no one hear my voice? A week later, the town was back to its routine. Jenna worked at the store every day, continuing her small-town life as usual. But the peace inside her, which had been there before that terrifying night, was gone. Every time she encountered Marcus, the unease in her chest deepened. His eyes were always on her. At first, she hoped everything would return to normal as long as she wasn't harassed again. But she was wrong. One morning, Jenna opened the store early to start her shift. Just then, Marcus, working independently of the other security guards, walked in. Jenna turned the key in the door with trembling hands as she heard Marcus's approaching footsteps. "You're here early today," he said, his voice laced with a mocking tone. No matter how careful Jenna tried to be, she quickened her steps and focused on her work. However, Marcus blocked her path once again. The man, who was considered trustworthy by the townspeople, approached and stood in front of her. His eyes, with their cold gaze, hung heavily in the air like a dark cloud. In an instant, everything changed. Marcus pushed Jenna, wrapping his arms tightly around her. "I told you," he said. "You can't escape me." At that moment, Jenna's heart was in her throat, and despite wanting to scream, her voice was trapped in her chest. Nothing mattered at that moment, except for Marcus's pressure and threat. After a while, Jenna managed to break free with difficulty. She quickly ran to the other corner of the room. Everything had happened so fast, but Jenna didn't know what to do next. In the dead silence, she paused for a moment in shock. Finally, she made a decision. This time, she would not stay silent. She lifted her head with strength. Her eyes reddened, and courage echoed in her heart. She had to act to tell the town the truth about Marcus. That day, she decided she needed to make everyone aware of Marcus's true identity. She had no more fear. The next day, she wrote down everything she had experienced and reached out to the town's journalist. In the letter she sent to the newspaper, she detailed everything that had happened to her and how Marcus had treated her. As she wrote with her pen, her hands shook, but she felt a sense of peace inside. Standing up against injustice, she thought, might change what it meant to trust anyone in this town. However, Jenna's fear, no matter how brave she was, didn't end as quickly as she hoped. After the article was published, the town's attitude changed completely. People started rejecting the accusations against Marcus. The townspeople began to question Jenna, saying, "Can someone so trustworthy really do something so terrible?" The reactions to the article caused great unrest in the town. Jenna began receiving negative responses from every corner of the town. People turned their backs on her, accusing her of lying. Not only the townspeople, but also Jenna's own family started to approach her with doubt. Her family argued that Marcus, being a well-known figure in the town, couldn't possibly commit such crimes. Her mother said, "How could a man like you do such a thing?" as she questioned her, while her father also defended Marcus. This situation made Jenna feel even more isolated. Everyone around her, instead of believing her, began trusting Marcus even more. Her friends warned her with, "You should be careful," but none of them gave her the courage or stood by her side. Jenna felt so alone that she had become a stranger in the eyes of others. However, a voice inside her whispered that it didn't matter how alone she was. Standing up for the truth came with a price. Meanwhile, the looks from the townspeople turned into unspoken accusations. But Jenna, with the anger she had accumulated inside, was determined to break this silence. She believed that one day, justice would prevail. She had to stand against the community that was now trying to cover up Marcus's crimes. She would fight not only for her own safety, but for all the women who remained silent. Because she was not alone, and this silence couldn't continue. As each day passed, Jenna became more and more isolated and realized that the only way to escape this dark world was to refuse to remain silent. In the eyes of the town, Marcus's guilt was nothing more than a smear campaign, and no one wanted to see his true face. Fighting against the silence felt like the only way to pursue justice. She decided to overcome the fear within her and make a change. One morning, Springfield Observer, the town's oldest newspaper, reached out to Jenna and offered her an opportunity. The paper was giving her the chance to reveal who Marcus truly was, the dark sides of him that the town had failed to see. This was Jenna's chance of a lifetime. She wanted to be the first person to speak out against Marcus, to show the town the truth, and to make the world hear the pain he had caused her. Slowly, but resolutely, she took the pen in her hand and began writing about the trauma she had endured. She carefully described every moment, from the first time she met Marcus to that horrifying night. She detailed how Marcus had manipulated her, silently approaching her and gaining her trust, and she recounted the terrifying moments in every word. Each sentence became an outlet for the pain and fear that had built up in her heart. But at the same time, it was a moment where Jenna would pay the price for her courage. Believing that the truth was worth facing, she finished her article. Few days later, Jenna's piece was published as the headline in the Springfield Observer. The title was simple: A Woman's True Story, The Mask of the Trustworthy. At first, Jenna didn't feel the impact of the publication, but soon a storm began to brew in the town. Initially, only a few people picked up the paper to read the article. But before long, most of the town's people had read it, and a massive outburst of anger followed. When Jenna stepped into town holding the paper, she could feel that all the eyes around her had changed. The accusatory looks deeply affected her. Those who had said nothing at first now started reacting. Some grimaced and walked past her, muttering, "Did you really have to do this?" Others whispered behind her, "How could such a trustworthy person do something like this?" The townspeople immediately began defending Marcus. His years of service as a security guard in the town, his involvement in every local event, and the trust the townspeople had in him only reinforced his image as a good man in their eyes. How could someone so well known be guilty of anything? The people who refused to believe Marcus was guilty began accusing Jenna of lying. Some townsfolk even said he deserved a chance, but now she's tarnished the reputation of the entire town. Her family also started to take a stand against her. Her mother tearfully defended Marcus, saying, "Marcus is our old friend. Why are you accusing him?" Her father, arguing that nothing should be lost by supporting the town's well-known figure, said, "Accusing a man like him means shaking everyone's trust. You should back down." As Jenna faced this backlash even from her own family, the way the rest of the town looked at her became almost unbearable. However, Jenna couldn't suppress the trauma she had experienced. Defending Marcus only made the townspeople think it was easy to accuse her, but no matter what, she had to tell the truth. Remaining silent and carrying this trauma inside for years no longer made sense. Her determination and courage made her feel like a devil in the eyes of the town. But in her own heart, she felt like a hero, because she knew she would pay the price for seeking justice and telling the truth. Over time, the townspeople openly became hostile toward Jenna. When she walked by the market, no one would look at her, and everyone silently went on their way. No one greeted her with a "good morning." No one made eye contact. The woman who once smiled and exchanged warm greetings with the town was now an outcast, but despite all this pressure, she never wavered. She was determined to pursue justice and what she knew to be right. Maybe she would pay the price for being the first woman to speak up, but this battle would open the door for others to raise their voices. The path was long and difficult, but Jenna knew that in the end, she was not alone, and justice had to be served no matter what. As Jenna became more isolated and ostracized in the eyes of the town and her family, a light sparked within her. If the town wouldn't listen to her, perhaps she could reach a wider audience. Social media offered her a chance to raise her voice, share her story, and most importantly, show that she wasn't alone. Against the narrow-mindedness of the town, she thought she could make her voice heard on a global scale. Without hesitation, she created social media accounts. At first, she had only a few followers, but it was the beginning of something bigger. For several days, Jenna picked up her phone repeatedly, writing and deleting posts. She realized how courageous it was to share her pain, fears, and the trauma she had experienced with the world. But something inside her urged her forward. Maybe there were other women who were just like her. Maybe they too were silencing their pain in silence. Perhaps raising her voice in a world where everyone else was silent could make a difference. She decided to create a video. As she stood in front of the camera, her hands shook, but there was determination in her eyes. The video was simple. "My name is Jenna Walker, and I stayed silent for years. Now I'm telling you the truth." She then shared how Marcus had harassed her, how the town had continued to turn a blind eye, and how in the end, she refused to stay silent. She spoke about being a woman who was tried to be silenced and falsely accused in a world that still didn't want to hear the truth, and her journey to find the justice she deserved. Sharing the video eased some of the fears Jenna had, but it didn't take long for her to start seeing the full impact. At first, she received only a few comments, but suddenly her story spread like wildfire. Jenna had brought to light the hidden pains that so many people carried. Women began sharing their own harassment stories. Each one was courageously shared, like a personal tale. Women began to say, "I stayed silent too, but I won't anymore," and started supporting Jenna. This wasn't just the voice of one woman, It marked the beginning of a movement where many women found their voice. After sharing the video, Jenna's follower count grew rapidly. Thousands of women didn't just watch her, but also began sharing their own experiences, fears, and the silent society had forced upon them on their social media accounts. Each story encouraged another. Many women who had never been able to speak out or had forced themselves to accept their trauma began to voice their experiences, creating a societal awareness. Jenna's story became the spark that ignited this movement. Jenna's courage began to attract not just the attention of women, but men as well. Some male followers sent her supportive messages. Raising awareness on this is so important, some said. However, social media also brought with it negative responses. The people of her town were still blaming her and becoming more aggressive. They tried to insult Jenna and isolate her further. Comments like, "You ruined the town," showed that the townspeople were still on Marcus's side, defending every lie. Nevertheless, Jenna didn't let the attacks from her town affect her. The support she gained on social media gave her strength. On one side, she faced the growing disdain from her town and family. On the other side, she saw the worldwide support and attention she was receiving, which only strengthened her resolve. Every new message of support pushed her further forward. Her journey for justice was no longer confined to her town, but was spreading across the globe. Many women commented on Jenna's videos and posts, expressing their admiration for her courage, saying that through her, they were able to find their own voices. The people in her town, perhaps most influenced by the reactions of those outside the town, began to question their own wrongdoings. As Jenna's voice became a national one, the townspeople began to realize how wrong they had been in defending Marcus. However, this wasn't a victory for Jenna yet, because there was nothing truly gained. It all began when one woman and a community realized how dangerous it is to stay silent and bottle up their pain. The power of social media didn't just amplify Jenna's voice, it also turned her into a symbol. Now, she was not just known in her town, but had become a recognized and admired figure nationwide. Yet the townspeople still turned their backs on her. In the eyes of many women, Jenna had become a hero. She had thousands of people who believed in and supported her. And most importantly, her story raised awareness about a woman's realization that when she speaks out on the path of what she knows is right, she is never truly alone. Jenna was determined not to give up her fight for justice. Social media became not just a platform for her voice, but also a place for her to show her strength and inspire other women. Even though the town refused to embrace her, she was now part of a much larger community. And this journey was just beginning. After gaining support on social media, Jenna decided to take a stronger step toward justice, legal action. However, this was not going to be an easy path. Marcus, the most influential and trusted person in town, was not just a member of the community, but also a close friend of the town sheriff. This relationship had placed him beyond the reach of justice and made him a respected figure in the eyes of everyone outside the town. As Jenna set out to reveal the truth, she was faced with not just Marcus but a system backed by the town government and officials who were loyal to him. When Jenna took the first step, she was shocked by what happened at the police station. The town sheriff, who often spent time with Marcus and was close to him, showed no reaction when Jenna presented her accusations of harassment. "We'll investigate the matter," was the response she got, dismissing her concerns. But deep down, Jenna knew that this was just an excuse. The sheriff's closeness to Marcus made the attempt to cover up the situation even more obvious. The police. Reports had been reluctantly written at first, seemingly prepared to cover up Marcus's crime. Jenna was once again left alone. However, she refused to stay silent and continued on the path she knew was right. This time, it wasn't just her own voice that gave her strength, but also the voices of the other women who united around her, on social media and in her community. Women came together, inspired by Jenna's courage, to offer their support. Many women shared how they had faced similar harassment from men like Marcus. Some had encountered it at work, others at school, and some even on the streets. The women decided not to stay silent and to fight for their rights. Each one, standing behind Jenna's voice, wanted to make the world understand that the pain they had experienced was not just a personal trauma, but a societal issue. This unity became not just a case, but a symbol of the fight for women's rights and for living with dignity. Jenna contacted a local lawyer and proposed filing a lawsuit against Marcus. At first, the lawyer thought that suing such a powerful figure would be impossible. But after witnessing Jenna's determination, he decided to start the legal process. The lawyer explained the issues within the local legal system and how the town's officials tended to cover up these matters. But Jenna encouraged him. Justice always comes from doing what is right, not from fear. At the start of the case, Jenna filed a lawsuit not only against Marcus, but also against the town sheriff and the police department. The cover-up of the crime and the concealment of the truth had become part of the system. During the first hearings, instead of admitting Marcus's guilt, his lawyer rejected the accusations. Jenna's allegations could harm the town's image, they said, mentioning media and public pressure. Marcus and the sheriff's strong positions in the town complicated the case. A large portion of the town's people tried to distance themselves from the case, labeling those who supported Jenna as instigators. However, as Jenna became more isolated, the support from women around her only grew. As the trial progressed, other instances of harassment by Marcus came to light, including testimonies and evidence. Women who had been harassed by Marcus in the past had remained silent due to fear or social pressure. Now, they joined the case with courage. This changed the course of the trial. Now it wasn't just Jenna's word, but the suffering of many women that was included in the case file. Empowered by the courage of these women, the lawyer took the case a step further with new evidence and testimonies. Slowly, there was no real evidence left to support Marcus's claim of innocence. Even the townspeople couldn't keep their eyes closed any longer. In the following days, it became clear that the sheriff and some police officers were also under investigation. The sheriff's knowledge of Marcus's crimes and his cover-up efforts were becoming more apparent every day. In the end, Marcus was found guilty and sentenced to prison. Over time, the townspeople began to question the support they had given him. However, this victory was just the beginning for Jenna. Changing the minds of the townspeople and fighting for women's rights was only one phase of her ongoing struggle. But in that moment, she felt the power of courage and determination. Once again, Jenna had made a significant contribution to achieving justice not just for herself, but for all women. Defending oneself and speaking the truth was not just a right for one woman, but for all women. The realization of justice showed the townspeople and the world that remaining silent only magnifies pain, but raising voices together can create powerful change. This case was not just a fight for justice, but a symbol of a societal awakening. For Jenna, victory wasn't just about winning a court case. Yes, Marcus was punished, found guilty, and sentenced to prison. However, behind this victory lay a much deeper cost. The townspeople had witnessed not just a fight for justice, but also a battle against years of darkness. Although she had officially won, she was still labeled a villain in the eyes of her community. The townspeople believed that the price for a woman speaking out and demanding her rights was loneliness and being ostracized. After the trial, the town struggled to return to its old state. On one side were the women and supporters who believed in Jenna's righteousness, and on the other were those who still defended Marcus and preferred to remain silent. In the eyes of many, Jenna still carried a past full of accusations. Those who defended her saw it as a battle for a woman's rights. However, those who opposed her saw her as a storm that tarnished the town's honor. While the townspeople understood how right she was, they believed that a woman speaking so openly was disrupting the very structure of society. Jenna was exhausted by the stares she faced every day in the town and the whispers behind her back. Many of her old friends had cut off contact with her. Even her family no longer looked at her the same way. The alienation she felt from the townspeople was unbearable. Even her family increased their accusations, saying, "Do you realize how much damage you've done to the town?" Only her sister Sarah had always stood by her and supported her. But over time, Sarah too began to be looked down upon by the townspeople. Although Jenna appeared to be a brave woman from the outside, inside she carried a great loneliness. She had won the battle for justice, but the pressure from her own community was emotionally and psychologically draining her. As she walked alone through the town streets, she felt more and more isolated with every glance. She had lost her confidence. People not only looked at her with suspicion, but continued to accuse and ostracize her. She was trying to live with the societal norms imposed on her as a woman. Despite being right, she had been cast out, made almost invisible. The cost of victory wasn't just a court ruling. Jenna realized that everything she had gained in her search for justice had led to the loss of some things. But the voice inside her told her not to give up. "Yes, I've lost, but I've gained a lot too," she said to herself. She had reached victory, won the battle for justice, but it would never make her life the same as before. She thought about the support she had gained on social media. Many women, inspired by her struggle, shared their own stories. They followed Jenna, supported her, wanting their voices to be heard as well. Despite her feelings of loneliness, this helped Jenna recognize the strength of other women. Every post, every story, symbolized a new hope for her. The fact that many women were starting their own struggles gave her a source of morale. However, much hadn't changed in the town. Jenna knew it was all about doing what was right. The support and courage she found on social media had helped her rise again. She had made peace with herself, accepting that the victory she won would not just change her life but the lives of others as well. She had opened a path for women to make their voices heard, defend their rights, and share their traumas. In the end, even though Jenna felt alone in the town, she once again understood how important it was to speak up and do what was right. With every step she took, she was teaching society and the world something. There are other women walking in my path, she realized, understanding just how valuable her victory was. This victory wasn't just a personal triumph, it was the triumph of all women. Jenna had found herself again and regained the trust she had lost. But that trust didn't come from the outside world. It came from the belief within herself. As she walked on the path she believed in, even if she was alone, in the end, her community would come to understand how much they needed her. She had paid the price for victory, but that price had left a mark in society. That mark could never be erased.